Whammo.
Whoa, hold on a second. You hit him?
Yep.
You hit the Joker.
Uh-huh.
You ran over a human being.
Sure did.
But what about your rule?
Didn't kill him. Hey, he said he wanted me to do it.
You, sir, are bold. I'll bet Gotham loves you now.
Well, turns out the Joker already had this unbeatable plan. A lot of people died, and now the city hates me.
What? They hate you? How is this a good story?
It's because I'm the hero Gotham deserves, but not the one it needs. It's complicated, but it's pretty awesome when you think about it.
Yeah, I don't know what any of that means. But dude, you know what I would have done?
Oh, I don't know. Probably just
Fly really fast, saving everyone from the bullets and explosions. Exactly!
Yeah, well, I can't do all those things, because I'm not a super bulletproof alien from another planet that can defy gravity. But you know what I can do?
What's that?
Make an incredibly awesome movie.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 15 of the Pseudo Nerd Podcast for April 15th, 2016. I am your podcast host, Josh Kiser, and joining me today, Mr. Joshua Haddix.
Hello, everybody.
And Kyle Hoagland.
Were you trying to say something witty?
I'm always trying to say something witty.
Well, what's going on?
You should have said joining us in the theater since we're talking about a movie today.
You know, I was trying to debate, like, joining us and, you know, there's not really, like, a in the universe or, like, you know, I was trying to think, like, they're on planet Earth, I suppose, and I didn't know if theater would have been appropriate or not, so I chose neither and none of them.
It's good. It's a good classic crash and burn. That never happened, I guess.
Yeah, well, you know. I guess you can just call me Zach Snyder then, right?
See, here's my thing. Why does everyone hate Zach Snyder so much?
I don't know. They have a thing against him for quite some time now. I think he kind of comes off like a dick, so they don't like him for that reason.
I think people just think that he can't direct an action film. But
they like his visuals, but then they just hate everything else he does.
Is that like Michael Bay? Where it's like all
well, now
visuals?
They just hate everything about Michael Bay, but yeah.
Well, I mean, there's good reason for that. Have you ever seen Pearl Harbor?
Unfortunately, I did.
I've seen Pearl Harbor as well.
That was one of my first date movies when I was like,
who the
14.
hell takes a girl to see Pearl Harbor?
Dude, Josh Hartnett back then, man.
It's a 3.5 hour long movie. Like,
dude, I don't know. What do you think? I'm a 14-year-old kid with hormones, man. Girl wanted to go see it.
Hoagie wanted to try the old popcorn trick. So he wanted a nice long movie that he could, you know.
There's like an intermission and shit. She got up.
The whole movie's an intermission.
They actually went to a double feature. They saw Titanic first, followed by Pearl Harbor.
After that, we saw Gettysburg.
And when she was feeling real frisky, he took her home for the Lord of the Rings director's cut extended versions.
Oh, she got the extended version.
Hey-o.
It's a penis joke.
Ladies and gentlemen.
If you guys want to write in and tell Hoagie better date ideas, feel free to do it on our Facebook page or Twitter. You know, we still are looking for some followers and likes and all that kind of stuff there. Go to pseudonerdpod.com. It's an easy way to find all that. And please subscribe to us on iTunes. If nothing more, just download the episodes. If you're listening last week and you're like, you know what? I don't care about baseball. I don't care about the Indians. It's April. I cannot agree with you in some regard there. You know what? Just download anyways. We just need those downloads.
We don't really need fans, is what Kiser's trying to say. We just need puppets that'll just download stuff for us. But no, in all honesty, we would love for you guys to actually enjoy what we're putting out there.
But in seriousness, like, you can still just download and not listen. That's cool too. Haddix putting as much input this week as he did last week in the podcast. So,
I mean, hey, man, what else is there to say? Download, delete it right away. I mean, I'm okay with that.
You can quote Haddix on that. Just download it and then delete it
Don't
immediately.
quote me on the quotes, okay?
Unquote.
I don't know who's quoted with what now.
What's everyone doing this weekend? Let's get the banter. Let's continue the banter.
I'm going to the Indians game actually, so there's that.
No one gives a shit about that apparently. And Haddix, what about you?
Kiser, as well as I, am helping our dear friend Adam Brittam move into his home on Saturday morning.
Well, good for him. I know that was talked about at least for the last 6 months that he was in the process of getting this home.
Yeah. So that'll be.
I'll be doing something as exciting. I will be flying to tropical Vermont for a funeral. My wife's grandma passed away, and had to get a brand new suit. Dropped almost $1,000 on it, but you got to be fancy. Also, it's California, so everything costs $1,000.
That's true. Condolences to the Highland family, and
Yes.
Condolences to your checkbook for purchasing such an expensive suit.
At some point, I had to get another one. I hadn't had a new suit in 8 years. I've probably worn that suit 3 times in the 8 years I've probably had it, because I really had no. I don't like wearing suits to a wedding unless I'm a part of the wedding, which in that case I'm usually wearing something that I was told to wear. So you don't actually really wear your own suit. So I think I wore it once to a job interview. I wore it to my dad's funeral. I wore it to some just meeting thing for college. And other than that, that's about it. Everything else, I always try to dress a little bit more casually for events, especially during the summer where I don't want to wear a full-blown suit. So yeah, it basically just kind of sits there. And so now saying that out loud really makes me deeply regret spending almost $1,000 on a suit.
Well, yeah, spending $1,000 on anything is never fun.
Do you know what I can't even segue properly into
I thought they were
today's
gonna be
podcast.
you know what else was also maybe fun or not was Batman versus Superman movie.
No, actually, I was going to mention the budget that I was going to try and spend money in there and swing that in there, but it's just not working.
And we are just a mess this week.
This has just been a terrible start. I apologize. No wonder nobody's downloading or subscribing to this thing. This is just pure garbage.
Well, if you guys are bored, just turn this off now and go listen to the Full House podcast.
Well, it's the whole point. It's the whole point of downloading and then deleting. At no point in there did anyone say, "Listen, just download and delete."
That's true. That's absolutely true. But as we were trying to get to today's podcast, we're going to review the Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice movie. And before we get into it, I just want to spend a minute or two real quick here, kind of get everybody's quick opinion on the movie and what they thought. So when we start to actually discuss it, people know where we're coming from. If one of us absolutely loved it or absolutely hated it, the listeners can sort of understand our bias one way or the other when we start talking about it. So Haddix, since you are the Batman/DC fanatic, I'm pretty sure they could have just been 2.5 hours of Ben Affleck taking a dump, and you would have enjoyed it. Why don't you give us your quick opinion on this?
Yes, that is a true statement. And without getting into too much detail, because like you said, we will in the rest of the podcast. But overall, I liked it. And you can sit here and say a lot of things about it, but the one thing that bothers me is the people that say they didn't like it because it wasn't like the comics. At no point did anyone say it was going to be identical to the comic book. So if that's the reason you don't like it, I think you're being a little bit of an ass. Now, if you just think it was a bad movie, then okay, that's fine. But if you don't like it because of some unreasonable expectation, that's your own fault. So personally, I enjoyed it.
And I feel like that argument, too, the Christopher Nolan movies aren't that strict to the comics. And I feel like a lot of these other comic book movies aren't very strict to the comics. They're loose interpretations, and they're made differently. If you want a comic book movie completely in tune with the comics, either watch the animated stuff or just go read the comics.
Or watch the comic. And the crazy part is this is probably the closest any Batman iteration has gotten to Batman, but yet there's, still a bunch of people that hate it because it's not exactly like it. So
right,
you can never please everybody.
No, you won't. But Hoagie, how about you?
I've never been much of like the jaded movie critic for anything. To me, it's always just been I spent $12, to go see a movie. Was it worth $12? What should I have waited for it to rent it on a Redbox or something like that, or wait for it to be digitally available? And to that extent, I don't regret going to the movie to see it. I thought it was enjoyable. I only saw the movie once, so I watch the movie the first time to kind of just enjoy it and not try to like nitpick everything. And then I might go see it a second or a third time to really either see what they're trying to do with the movie or what any kind of shortcomings. This particular movie, I didn't get a chance to do that. But I'm on Haddix's side where I feel like there might have been more expectation than was. I think that was justified. I think the movie
Dawn of Justified.
Jesus Christ. You never do this to Haddix. You know what? I've been listening to a lot of our podcasts recently. You let that guy just go ahead and have free range, and then you got to nitpick when I talk.
You just set me up better than he does. That's all. You're just a better setup man.
All right, I'll take that. I'll take it as a compliment.
I've known him long enough that I stay away from those trigger words.
I gotcha. So, but yeah, just getting back to what I was saying before, I enjoyed the movie. Obviously, we'll talk more about our specifics, but
actually, I was just about to wrap the podcast up right now. Call it a day.
Oh well, then see you later. I liked it though.
No, okay, well, cool. And then briefly on my behalf, I actually am sort of a jaded movie critic these days, unlike yourself, both of you. I kind of went into it. My hype for this movie has been up and down and all over the place, and by this point going into it, I actually expected to kind of hate it. Got about 10 minutes in the movie and was really starting to hate it, and then by the end of it, I really enjoyed it. It pleasantly surprised me, so we'll get into the positives and negatives as we break the movie down by sections. Right before we start characters, though, which is where we're gonna talk all the new characters and things like that first. Before we do that, I have one point of note, and I think you guys can weigh in quickly with me on this one. The movie trailer for this particular movie absolutely ruined the movie, and that bothers me a lot. I like movie trailers. I like getting a little teaser here and there. You get to see what characters look like, maybe a quick interaction, a quick scene, all that kind of hype you for upcoming movies. Like, I think they're necessary. But my God, this is a formula. Somebody needs to watch this trailer and then watch the movie and show somebody, like, this is how you ruin a movie. They gave away all the twists, all the the basic. You could write the story off the trailer, and you shouldn't be able to do that with movies. Go watch the Star Wars trailers for Force Awakens. That's how it's done right. This was done poorly.
And a lot of these movies are doing that, where it's like a year buildup of a lot of trailers, and because that's what we want. Like, we know the movie's coming out soon, so I guess they just want to give people reasons to go see it, but then they overdo it. I know that Deadpool was obviously the exact opposite. We knew this movie was coming out, and there was a lot of things released, but there was nothing about the story that was given away. It was, obviously it was just Deadpool talking to us and doing silly things, but it was completely independent of the actual film. The problem that I had, like I said, think of it like, remember when Superbad came out, and beforehand they had like 6 trailers for that movie? And it was just like, I didn't even need to go see the movie, because the funniest parts of the movie were in all of the trailers. So what was the point of Superbad paying money for it? I can see that same complaint being in this, where people were asking for more and more and more, where it needed to be more cryptic. It needed to be more
kryptonitic.
A teaser. Damn it, you're right, Haddix. It needed to be more. It needed to be more of a teaser trailer than being like, here's the fucking story. So yeah, I can see what you're getting at with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys touched it all. The only thing that really bothered me was the Doomsday reveal. Other than that,
not only did they ruin Doomsday by bringing him in, but then they basically you're like, did they take Zod's body and turn him into Doomsday?
Yeah,
that's how the trailer made it look, and that's exactly what happened. So it was very annoying.
Yeah,
but
agreed.
let's start talking about the new characters. While Man of Steel came out a couple of years back, and originally this movie you thought was going to be Man of Steel 2, then it became sort of its own way for DC to jumpstart the entire Justice League. Definitely a different route than Marvel's going. I think part of the reason is because they're way behind on Marvel, and they're trying to play major catch-up here, and it probably hurt them a little bit, honestly, and we'll get into that as we go, but you already have your Superman, Henry Cavill from the first one. I think he's a phenomenal Superman. He's my favorite of any portrayals of Superman on both the small screen and the big screen. But the big one, of course, is Ben Affleck playing Batman. He was very controversial. You know, the internet lost their minds like they did when Heath Ledger was cast as the Joker, like they do for every casting these days. So, Haddix, let me ask you, because you are the Batman guy, what were your impressions of Affleck and the Batman character itself?
He was great in the representation that they wanted him in. And a lot of people can complain about his brutality and a lot of other different things about him, but the story arc that they pulled that Batman from, that was the type of Batman he was. He's an older, more brutal Batman. In my mind, to be honest with you, if I was making a movie, it's not the portrayal of Batman that I would have chosen, you know, growing up with the cartoon and stuff like that. But it's the one that they mimicked the movie off of, and that portrayal was almost spot on. I mean, yeah, you'll have some people complaining, but that older, that more harsh Batman, that he's just been through so much. He's not that he's snapped, but he's almost on that brink of not caring anymore, like he, you know, does in the comics.
He's almost like a jaded superhero because he's been through and seen a lot of shit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we infer from things that are in the movie and from what. I guess before we go any further, we probably should have thrown out a spoiler if anyone.
In case the title of the podcast doesn't give it away.
But anyway, you can infer from clips of the movie and things that have been said that Robin is dead at this point, and it's just a distraught Batman. He just doesn't give a shit. So,
do you mind that he's not like a cold-blooded killer like Deadpool where he just kills and doesn't care, but it's almost like Batman, if he killed somebody, it's collateral damage.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
Are you fine with that?
You know,
I feel like he's always been that way anyways, that people sometimes have died due to his actions, but it's never been like him like staring somebody in the face as he like slits someone's throat. That's never been bad.
Well, I think the biggest reason, because this has been a big point of emphasis with the negative reviews online, is that Batman's a killer, this is not Batman, yada. I feel like there's a recency bias in people's minds from the Nolan Batman that is all they can think about, and there's like they want to keep going back to that and thinking that that's how Batman should be. And they're ruining that Batman. But to your point, it's a different take, and I think it's a much more entertaining from a comic book standpoint Batman.
Agreed.
And a lot of people had that same feeling though about Man of Steel, where when, spoiler alert, he like snaps General Zod's neck. You know, that's also a thing where Superman does not kill.
Now, that one I'll agree with a little bit more. Is I can understand people understanding, like, being upset that, Superman doesn't kill. Well, that's true, but in that one, he was put in such a lose-lose situation that, you know, he was left with no choice other than to kill Zod. I'm sure there's probably other options that people online are going to bring up, but I was okay with that one because it forced, you know, it tormented him. So I could understand that, but I agree with you. There were some people that were upset, and then pointing back to that as well. But another character they introduced was Wonder Woman, and Hougie, I'm going to have you kind of give us your opinion on her.
So I'm very happy that they kind of casted, in my eyes, I mean, obviously she's been in a few movies, and I think she's in, what's the other movie that she's in? I just saw the Criminal movie, I believe. She was amazing. I think I speak for even the both of you, where I think she really made the movie, like, as for anything that, any kind of negativity
Wonderful.
that movie. Yes. No, she was great. She had a very, you can tell that at the very beginning, even if people didn't think that she was Wonder Woman yet, you can tell that she was somewhat important. She was in a couple of scenes, talking to Bruce Wayne, and then Bruce kind of figures out that there's this woman from the the 20s or the 30s or whatever it was, like during this like liberation. There's this old time picture of Wonder Woman, and it looked exactly like the woman that he had talked to at that party, at that I think both at the party at Luther's, and also I think there was like some sort of art exhibit where he runs into her again, and you can tell that she's important. And then just her entrance and the way she just like the smirk as she's fighting Doomsday, she seemed more powerful and more badass than both of the male leads.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely did a good job of balancing. What I liked about it is they introduced her, but she wasn't, was in just bit parts here and there, and it was enough to get you to be introduced, but then you still saw she was she was badass, and it was cool, but it was just enough to like satisfy your hunger without like overbearing you on introducing her or forcing it into the movie.
Agreed. It made me excited to actually see the solo Wonder Woman movie after seeing it was just enough to tease, but not overbearing, like you were saying, not overbearing where it should have been a Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman movie. It was still a Batman, arguably a Superman 2 movie, but still a Batman, Superman movie.
Well,
Right.
it's definitely the the sequel to Man of Steel. It was so good, especially with, I liked, Ben Affleck's portrayal of Batman as well, but I also feel like doing that almost watered down Superman, which maybe that was kind of required to do just because of who Superman is. Obviously when they're all fighting Doomsday, Superman's really the one that looks like he just gets his shit kicked in.
Well, and I mean, Superman was also nuked during that and had been recently exposed to kryptonite, so he could have been in a weakened state.
Yeah,
I suppose, but I feel like what that movie kind of showed too, though, was that I think that Superman still is not. He's not the Superman that I'm used to seeing in the comics and in like the animated series and stuff, where he's practically a god. He's very much in tune to his abilities and what he's capable of. This is definitely which I think a lot of people have complained about, is that this is like a young Superman who's still trying to get used to his powers. And then you've got the Dark Knight Returns version of Batman, who's supposed to be like the older, I guess it's a more crotchety Batman. So I think that's another thing where I think people have kind of gotten that little issue where there's such a time difference between like how green still Superman is versus how veteran Batman is at this particular point in the story.
I mean, I don't mind that, but I can understand there being an argument that why about that big difference in age, instead of them being at similar points in their careers, instead of Batman being the old wily veteran and Superman being the up and coming rookie.
Old wily veteran.
But I want to take the lead on this last big character that was introduced, and that was Lex Luthor. And the reason I want to take the lead is this was my big concern going into the movie. I'm a huge Lex Luthor fan. I loved Michael Rosenbaum's portrayal and in Smallville, and I've always loved the Lex character. And when I heard Jesse Eisenberg was cast, I was like, ugh, I don't know. You know, I know he's a good actor, but I can't see him in this role. And then I started seeing the trailers, this and that, and he's like playing this like goofy, zany sort of guy. And I'm like, what are they doing? And then as I'm watching the movie, he grew on me. They instantly come out and say he's Lex Jr. His father was Lex as well. So take it whether you want to believe he is this version of Lex or he's the version of Lex you're used to is dead and this is the next one. It doesn't matter. He is Lex. He is going to be the Lex for this story. And he's a little more psychotic, not as calculate. Well, I shouldn't say calculating because he's a genius, but he's a little more crazy with it. But he's a little more out there, I guess. A little more not with it per se from a mental standpoint, but he definitely knows what he's doing. He sees Superman as this villain, as this guy who can destroy the Earth, and he wants to do everything he can to basically end that. And as well, he has a sort of a god complex in this. And I know some people didn't like it. I thought I was going to hate it. But by the end of the movie, like, I loved his character. And I look forward to what he's going to do in future movies.
I'm okay with it being the introduction to Lex, where, you know, this clearly is his truly his first time dealing with Superman and his feelings about him. And he's obviously he's in jail now or whatever. He's under, you know, very high security. You know, he shaves his head at the end, which is, you know, the iconic, you know, shaved head of Lex Luthor. I think the cold, calculating Lex will slowly start to become much more prevalent in the future movies.
Yeah, I definitely am looking forward to seeing where they go with that. So those were the big three characters that were introduced. Of course, Alfred made a appearance as well. I like Jeremy Irons' portrayal of him. Other than that, I think the rest of the characters were minor characters, and we don't really need to touch base with them at this point. We just wanted to get through the big ones. Now, briefly, we're going to move into the editing, the story, that kind of thing of the editing and production. And I'll say this first: I'm not a theater background person, so like I don't pay too close attention when it comes to this kind of stuff. People had a real big issue with the editing in this movie. I don't know if either of you want to touch base on this and say if you agree, disagree, or saw where they were coming from when it came to the editing and pacing and things like that a lot of critics really bashed about this movie.
Well, I'd have to go with you. I don't really have that background, so I don't notice it as well. So as far as the editing goes, I had no problem with it, but that doesn't really mean much. So
I always kind of tie in editing and all that stuff in with the story, because that usually, if you're really good at that kind of stuff, you can either make a good story into a great story, or you can make a story that might be lacking into, you know, kind of making up for it by having, you know, great effects and, you know, really splicing together the, you know, the scenes. So I'm kind of the same thing with you guys. I don't really have too much to throw on the editing, except for when you have what appeared to be, let's be honest, it started slow. I mean, the first probably 30 minutes of the movie was kind of like, you know, last time on Superman, the first movie. So that was the first part of it was, you know, that.
You
so
know,
then
I was okay with that only because it was exactly what you said last time on Superman, but it was from Batman's portrayal. So you're watching, if you watch Man of Steel and you see how that take place, you're like, okay, yeah, Superman's saving the day, he's beating the shit out of Zod, this and that, and you're not really paying attention to the fact that they're leveling an entire city, and there's all these innocent civilians, things just dying left and right. You're just like happy Superman saving the day. Where then you watch it here, and it's like Bruce Wayne's like racing around, you're seeing these buildings come crashing down, there's people basically dying left and right, getting hurt, getting covered in debris and falling into, you know, ashes and burning up, that kind of thing, and you don't take it, almost like brings you to the other side of things. So I thought that was kind of a cool aspect to the movie.
Yeah, and I agree. I think for a while, a lot of people weren't. I think who had different expectations of the movie, especially with the title being, you know, Batman versus Superman, is that it's like almost like a story that some people just might not have given a shit about, and then you finally get to the actual fight scenes, and then the actual fight with Batman and Superman, which really was only about 18 minutes long for the whole movie, and then the fight with Doomsday, which once again I feel like for people who don't know the story deeply, you know, where I think the three of us are paying attention to the whole movie to kind of like either catch the Easter eggs or, you know, really understand, because we know this is going to be a multi-part franchise and, you know, story arc. So we want to make sure we're not missing anything. But for the other people that aren't that interested, this really could have felt like a 2-hour long snooze fest followed by, you know, explosions and, you know, finally some heart racing action at the end.
Yeah, and we'll get into the story here shortly. Speaking of explosions and stuff, I gotta say Zach Snyder, and I think even the critics of him will agree, the visuals in this movie were great. I mean, they really did a good job of the visuals, but more importantly, Hans Zimmer, his score for this movie was fantastic. That Wonder Woman theme got me jacked up every time it was played out in the movie.
So good, dude. That when I saw it the second time after, you know, so you go the first time, you're paying attention to everything. You're hanging on to every scene, all this stuff. So you go back the second time.
Yeah, it's almost like a sensory overload that first time.
And you really find out when you're sitting there the second time the parts that you're really looking forward to seeing again. And probably 10 minutes into the movie, I couldn't wait to see that part where Wonder Woman finally, you know, blocks the whatever, the heat vision or whatever it is from Doomsday, and then her music hits, dude. That might be the best part of the whole movie.
I agree,
and it's because
cool.
it's half because of the music. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah. The music definitely sets the tone with it, and I really enjoyed his theme that he had for Lex Luthor as well. I mean, did a very good job with the music, but by and far the Wonder Woman theme, like I'll be looking forward to her movie just for that.
Yeah, exactly.
But let's move into the story now, because that's really what people care about, what we care about. And one of the big arguments I was seeing online is people thought that the story was confusing, convoluted, kind of jumbled, a bit of a mess. I personally walked out of there not thinking that it was that hard to follow. There's a couple of questions here and there that you might be a little unsure about, but I didn't think it was that bad. I don't know. Did either of you come out of there thinking like, God, that was a mess, or, you know, had some major questions about the story that you were unsure about?
There was maybe one thing I had to go home and just kind of look up just to I think it was just to confirm what my thoughts were. But if I'm speaking in defense of the person that was just going because they like Superman and Batman movies, not so much that they're the comic, you know, the kind of type of person who really pays attention to, you know, the story and anything like that. I can definitely see them coming out there and being like, "What did this scene mean? What did this scene?" Because it was a lot of scenes, very short ones, of, you know, Batman having or Bruce having, you know, I don't know, it would be like dreams or visions or whatever the case may be.
I gotta say, the dream sequences just annoyed the hell out of me.
But once again, that's a lot of those Easter eggs where, you know, for people who follow the story, they know exactly what that is. They totally get what's happening in that scene, where anybody else has no prior at all.
You're talking about the later ones, right?
Well, I mean, even there was even a point where, you know, he gets that premonition from Flash, and I would probably say half the people there might not even know that was Flash.
Oh, I agree. No, I mean, I even talked to people who like would have thought it was Flash and like didn't even think about it being Flash, but it'll make sense going forward, and I think it was a cool introduction to Flash if you weren't even realizing that was Flash in there. But I'm not even referring like that to me I enjoyed, but it was more the others, you know, like the beginning when he's like floating in the air getting carried up by the bats, like that was just stupid. Or when he's like he's at his mom's grave and this, like, you know, that creature jumps out from it, like those were things that, like, why is that even there?
Yeah, I wonder about that too, because I first was like, was that Doomsday? And then I looked at like, no, that wasn't Doomsday. That was just like some demon of some sort. So I'm like, once again, I have no reason why that scene had to be there. So it better be explained later,
Well,
or
yeah.
it needs to not be in it.
I was just about to say I'll give my 2 cents on that when we get into our what we
Theories?
think might happen. Yeah, our theories for later. But as far as the story goes, I'm with Kiser in the sense of, and again, I'm speaking more from someone who knows a lot of the background, so maybe it's easier for me.
I
When I
will
walked out of
say,
there-
I think having background knowledge of the characters, typical stories, things like that, would help going into this.
Yeah,
And
agreed,
whether that's
agreed.
fair or not to the average moviegoer, maybe not. So I will give people's critiques their fair.
Yeah, you'll give that a little bit. But as far as I walked out of there, the storyline was perfectly clear. I think, like you brought up earlier, DC's in a little bit of a catch up. So instead of, when Avengers hit, it had all these movies that had released before it that gave it some background so they could kind of jump right into it. Whereas
Right, yep.
this movie really needed to set the stage of why these characters were even going to cross each other's paths. So they kind of had to set all that up a little bit in the beginning. So I think that might be why it seemed a little, rushed or slow.
Yeah, it's definitely
not rushed
rushed.
in pace, but rushed as
No,
far
they're
as
just they're
the story
trying
jumped
to
around
get,
a lot.
Yeah, they're trying to get Wonder Woman's, or not origin, but they're trying to get her introduced. They're trying to get Batman introduced and where he's at this point.
Lex.
Meanwhile they're trying to get Lex introduced and sort of
Yeah.
have Lex set the table for future Justice League movies, things like that. And then they also throw in the Dawn of Justice introduction, which I'm just going to bring it out right now. That was so fucking stupid. Like, when she got that email and opens it up and plays the Flash video, then play not the Flash, like she didn't download Flash and play the video that was Flash. She played a video about Flash the superhero. The Cyborg video, which that was like by far the worst of the three, and that's saying a lot because Aquaman's introduction was fake as well. Like, they were so bad. Those 3 videos I thought were terrible, but to introduce them that way is really just does them a disservice. Does DC forcing, like, I feel like they should just call this movie Batman vs Superman. Wonder Woman could have been a pleasant surprise when you actually go in to see it, not have it spoiled by the trailer, and cut out the introduction of Flash, Cyborg, and Aquaman all together, or have Flash like that little scene where he's like coming through basically like jumping back in time to talk to him. That would have been a cool scene for him, and then that's it. And if they really wanted to show that scene where she's opening her email and playing those 3 files, which, by the way, her reading that email and stuff was like so fucking dumb. Like, it was a really stupid scene. That could have been a post-credit teaser, like, oh shit, like they just showed these 3 characters, like got you all jacked up for a future movie. Instead of throwing that just in the middle of the movie, that's where some of the editing, like, as a guy who doesn't know editing, I know that was not the place for it. And that part just really bothered me.
Yeah, I mean, just to touch on that, it didn't bother me, and maybe it's just because I got so excited to actually see them on a big screen. I mean, yeah, could it have done better? And I think you and I talked about this, Kiser. I feel like would have been great post-credit, but goes back to the whole don't want to copy off of Marvel too much, so maybe that's why they didn't do it like that, because I agree, it would have been better as a post-credit type of thing. But you wonder how much of it is not trying to copy off of your competitor,
Right. Yeah, and I'm sure that definitely had a role in it as well, but they could have done it so much better. That part was just bad. But what can you do? Hougie, is there a particular scene or aspect of the story that you want to talk about before I go into my next rant?
If it's about Lex, I'll wait.
It is not about Lex, so go for it.
Okay, my only true complaint about this whole movie, other than, like I said, I can deal with some of the pieces and parts of they said Batman's visions and a couple of things that are hard to explain to the person who was just there to see a movie, who would probably just expect that the whole 2.5 hours or whatever long that movie was, that from once the end of the movie happens, that most things should be roughly explained, which it didn't. Why is it that I feel like Rosenbaum would have been not Rosenbaum? Why
Eisenberg?
Eisenberg. Sorry, I wish they would have put him in there, but it seemed like Eisenberg would have made a better Riddler than a Lex. Especially
so they definitely, I can definitely see him playing a Riddler character. Like they kind of made him a little more
almost
psychotic
playful.
and playful. I'll give you that. It's definitely a different take on Lex, and I'm perfectly okay with that comparison to Riddler.
And I just wish that if everybody who's ever seen Lex in either movies or in Smallville or anything else, he's always been, like we've already explained, a very maniacal, but at the same time, a calm genius. He's never been a person that's ever lost his temper, a person that ever really cracked jokes. He's always been like an evil genius and a gentleman at the same time, which is like none of those things. Because this version of Lex, he bumbles when he speaks. He's not very good socially, which has never been Lex's problem. Lex has always been very smooth and very. He's always just been very approachable, honestly. But he's evil because he almost has the same motive as Batman, where they both see him as a threat, and they both, honestly, in their heart of hearts, probably wish that he wasn't around. But yeah, I did not like at all Lex's portrayal in this film. I hope it gets better. I hope it does go back to being more of what I'm used to. And maybe that's an unfair thing, and maybe that's what a lot of us have said. That's not fair for people to think that that's what they expect, and because it wasn't what they got, then they automatically don't like it. But I still feel like it was just overall an awkward portrayal of one of my favorite villains in the DC universe.
Yeah, I think honestly you're going to be pretty much stuck with that one. I think that's how it's going to be, and as you said, or even Haddix mentioned it earlier, this isn't the same Batman that people are used to in a lot of takes, and I think this is not going to be the same Lex Luthor that you're going to get, and that's just how it's going to be. Maybe there'll be a little bit of adaptation thing like that, but for the most part, you're going to get that type of Lex out of him. But I'm still curious. I liked it. I was surprised I liked it, but we'll see where they go forward with his character. One character that I hope they maybe minimize going forward, and I don't think they're going to based on Flash's little encounter, is Lois Lane. She just seemed too much of the damsel in distress in this movie, and that's not Lois. She's all over the place. She's involved way too much in the story. It's like Batman versus Superman, Lois is also around all the time. And it kind of annoyed me how much she was involved in the movie, and the way they portray Lois Lane as this helpless victim all the time.
If they can make Lois be more of once again, not involved in the front lines of things, and she has her own reason to be in the movie, but being once again back at the Daily Planet or finding information to help the group, and being an investigative reporter, I'm totally fine with that. But I do agree that I think that's also the what happens when you get a borderline A-lister as being as Lois Lane. I mean, Amy Adams has been in a lot of critically acclaimed movies, and she's a high dollar person. She's not going to take on a role where she's going to be a minimal impact.
Yeah, it's probably like the whole Jennifer Lawrence becoming Mystique and then blowing up, and now Mystique is a much bigger character than I think they originally wanted her to be in the new class X-Men movies.
Yeah, yeah, that's the Mystique thing is true as well. But I didn't have a problem with Amy Adams in this movie. Maybe a little bit too much, but I mean, in the comics and the cartoons and stuff, he's always saving Lois's life all the time anyway. Maybe not in the same manner. More so maybe how the movie started off, where she was out in the Middle East trying to get a story and, ended up almost getting killed, but then Superman saves her, which, by the way, is a badass scene. But they always say that kryptonite isn't Superman's weakness, it's Lois Lane. So at least they're kind of making their relationship, as important as it is in the comics. I mean,
yeah, I'll give you that one too.
You know what I mean?
Definitely
It's not.
is, yeah.
She's not just a side character that he happens to just bang her when he's acting like he's Clark Kent. Like, he really, really loves her. That's his tie to humanity. So that, at least that part, maybe it's a little overdone, but at least they're kind of driving that point home. So
yeah, no, that's a good point, and she's definitely going to play a role going forward because he says something to Flash when he's coming back. He says something to Bruce like, "We were wrong about Lois." Something else about Lois is the key or something to that effect. You were right.
You were right about him.
You were right about her or something. Yeah. So
Lois is the key. Yeah.
We'll see. One other point I want to bring up, and I'll have you, Haddix, I'll have you weigh in on this. The Martha line. Basically, Batman has this spear of kryptonite. He has Superman, for all intents and purposes, there ready to be killed. For all the Batman fanboys to say, like, "Hey, see guys, I told you Superman would lose in a fight to Batman." And then Superman, in his dying breath, says, "Help Martha," and pretty much causes Batman to, like,
"Did you say Martha?"
go nuts. And people say that, "Oh, we have the same, our moms had the same first name," and then say that unoriginal, "Did we just become best friends?" line and all that stuff. I, of course, think that it's absolutely ridiculous that people don't understand the truth behind this, but I want to get your input on that.
Well, I mean, that obviously doesn't happen in the Dark Knight Returns comics, but and it is true. They both do have their moms do have both have the same name. But I think we talked about this when we all went out to eat after we saw the movie the first time. I think it was more of a tie. I think it was a way to show Batman that, like, Superman was human, that he didn't care about himself in the end, that he cared about his mom. And then there's that whole name thing just made him revert back to, he lost his mom. Like, it's...
it really shows Batman's weakness. Like, that really, his parents and that psyche of his death is really his weakness.
Yeah, and it's true. I mean, that's what his parents' death is, what drives him to be Batman. I mean, they never die. He's not Batman. So, I mean, as much as Lois Lane is a huge part of Superman, like we just talked about, Batman's parents dying is a huge part of who he is. And I think it was just that tie-in. I think it was that tie-in of, his mom's going to die if he doesn't save him. Ties back into Batman was unable to save his mom, but might have a chance to save Superman's mom. So it was just, whether you thought it was cheesy or not, or unoriginal way to kind of...
I won't even say it. I won't disagree that it was cheesy, because there was definitely a bit of cheese on that, but I don't think it was completely ridiculous like some people make it sound, like it was like the most absurd thing in the world that they have. I saw somebody come out with the Civil War movies coming out, and they said, "Here's a list of all the characters in Civil War, what their what their parents' names are, just so you can know ahead of time."
But the thing is, it's not like they changed, Batman's mom's name to make it work in the story. Like, that's what their names have been since the comics were created. You know what I mean? It would have been cheesy if they did something like that. Like,
I'm almost surprised that they never used. I've never remember them using that as a story to, like, the fact that both of them had the same name. So I actually almost tipped the hat to the writers, being like, what, we have a way to exploit Batman's weakness in this sense.
Yeah, I didn't mind it. I thought it was fine.
Yeah, I agree. And before we kind of move into what our theories are going forward, does anybody have anything else about the story that they want to touch base on that we either ignored or you think? I guess I don't think we sound negative. I think we were bringing up a lot of the negatives, maybe ranted a little bit. But like I said, I think we all more or less enjoyed it, but we have our criticisms about the movie. But is there anything that you guys want to touch base on before we do that?
I have one, and it's very quick. My favorite part of the movie was the legitimate. I've grown up where Superman's always been a good guy. Everybody's always seen him as a good guy. Metropolis sees him as overall as the savior of the city. This movie really put where it's kind of it's polarizing, where you have a lot of people who, just like at the beginning of the movie, where there are people that praise him for saving the city, and there are others that remember the bad part of the aftermath of two Kryptonians fighting. So you have this alien that is revered by some and absolutely feared by others, to the point where even the government has to get involved just to see like what exactly does he stand for, and if this person is probably going to exist any further and live in our country or live on this planet. There's got to be some way to balance this guy out.
Yeah, I think they did a good job of that, and really that was kind of one of the major plot lines of what they were trying to drive home. And I think they sort of bring it about in the first, Man of Steel movie, and I think that would have been the focus of Man of Steel 2, would have been like, what are we doing about this guy who could literally wipe out the Earth? And instead they just tied it into this movie, which I thought worked out well. So that's sort of the story, the pros and the highs and the lows of the story. There's plenty more that we didn't get into, but that's okay. We've got one major plot line that we didn't bring up, and I guess we could bring this into our theories, and that's that they kill Superman in this movie, which I absolutely loved. Now, of course, at the end of the movie, you see the dirt rise from his casket. So is it safe to assume he's being resurrected or is already alive come Justice League?
I think in the beginning of Justice League, he is not around. I think he is. I don't think he's technically resurrected. I just don't think he ever really died. I think it just
that's fair too.
But I think in the beginning, he's not around. Batman groups everybody up, and then whether it's in the second act, they talk lately. I never heard this growing up, but lately they like break movies down into the 3 acts. There's like the first, second, third act. The third act being the ending, if you will. But maybe he comes back in the end. Like maybe they're about to lose to whoever they're fighting. Too. Yeah, I think he'll be back in Justice League 1 for what that's worth. Maybe the end of Justice League 1.
That's what I was thinking. I think it's one of those like he's awake or opens his eyes or does something like is back just for the ending scene of Justice League 1.
Yeah, or maybe something happens and they need him, and like he comes and saves the day at the last minute or something like that.
Right.
Do you think maybe they'll introduce the whole splits up into 3 or 4?
Nope, absolutely not.
I hope not.
I hope not either. That was more of a joke than it was a serious question.
The only thing I'm very curious about is they had a funeral. They buried Clark Kent. How the hell do you bring Clark Kent back from the dead and have Superman come back and not have every single person that knows Clark Kent put those 2 and 2 together?
Well, so far they haven't been able to put 2 and 2 together as Superman's Clark, except for some of the main guys. But I think they can get away with him now just being permanently Superman, and just never that the Clark character. Honestly,
but that
the Clark character was
so
cool in the
lame.
first movie, but it was he wasn't the Clark character in the second movie basically didn't exist.
Right. I see that, but I'm saying like if they ever want to do another standalone Superman movie, like. They need him to be like he can't just be Superman 100% of the time. That would be stupid.
So maybe they don't do another standalone Superman.
I think
that would be stupid.
I think they are. I think there's a lot of ways around it. We technically saw her grabbing like a hand. Maybe they never really found Clark's body, and that was like a dummy body that was in there. I think there's plenty of ways.
That would be dummy too if they did that.
I don't think there's any real good way, but I think there are ways around it. You know what I mean? Whether What they are.
Maybe he just flies around the planet and turns back time.
Yeah. Dude, that's probably the most logical way to figure it out, right?
I'm just saying that's an option.
But once again, the Superman now wouldn't have the ability to do this. He really, honestly, Superman right now sucks as far as his abilities. He's still a Kryptonian on Earth, but as far as his true abilities right now, he's still trying to figure everything out. He doesn't have the
I think he has his abilities, but he just holds it back.
Well, I don't think in this DC or in this movie universe he's ever going to have those godlike power. Superman in his prime in the comic books was unstoppable by anybody.
Well, and they had to water him down to make him interesting.
I think people hated that Superman because he was such a goody two shoes and he was so powerful that, I mean,
it becomes boring.
Yeah. So I don't think we'll ever get to that point. But
so any other theories? Obviously, Darkseid. Is he going to be the villain for Justice League?
I think that's the what people
think.
The
direction it seems like it's going.
But it wouldn't surprise me if somehow they tied in a Brainiac taking over Lex. Maybe that's why he was also acting so crazy in some of the movie.
I could see that as well. Yep.
He was in the ship, so we know he was in there. So maybe he got Brainiac downloaded himself and something like that.
He said, "Teach me everything," so he learns all that.
It wouldn't shock me if they, since everyone's thinking it's going to be Darkseid, that it's not Darkseid.
Well, I mean, when you're seeing Darkseid's minions and the big Omega symbol, I mean, it's hard. It'd be really hard to then go ahead and not use Darkseid in some way, shape, or form.
He's coming eventually, that's for sure. But whether or not they kind of take the old Thanos approach, where he is the final bad guy, but we're not going to bring him in for a little while. You know what I mean? Kind of one of those things.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We think that they're going to rush through this, so they're going to probably push to the
That and the newest comics that were released, the newest Justice League, they do come together as a Justice League fighting Darkseid. So a lot of people think they're following that story arc. So we'll see.
Oh, there you have it. Any other final thoughts, comments, anything on Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice?
I will close my side with just saying that I think the majority of the critics that hated this movie, I think just have an axe to grind with Snyder. I think that they just automatically are going to give a crazy, curve of approval with any movie he comes out with. I don't know. I really don't understand the reasoning, but I know that when I've, listened to reading stuff about the internet, before the movie even came out, people were just saying it can only be so good because Snyder is the director, which I think is unfair.
Agree. Haddix, any final thoughts?
My last thought is, if Kiser liked this movie, you should definitely go see it. Because that dude doesn't.
There you have it. I should just be a movie critic from now on. Well, all right. So that said, let's go get your guys' opinion. Leave us some feedback. Tell us what you thought of Batman Superman. Let us know on the Twitter or on Facebook or any of that stuff. Don't forget to subscribe, download, whether you listen today or not, download. I don't know how you're going to know that, but whatever. Next week, we're going to preview Game of Thrones Season 6. It comes out a week from Sunday, and we're going to talk all about it. Our thoughts and theories and predictions and all that. So that'll be a good one. From the home and birthplace of Superman to the home and birthplace of Farley. He's some comic news reporter strip that was created in San Francisco. You guys don't have a lot of comics out there, Kyle. Sorry. I am Josh Kiser. He is Kyle Hoagland, and he is Josh Haddix, and we'll see you guys next week.
Have a good Friday.
See you later.